Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Giant. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We have 9 postseason games to talk about today. We have some correct predictions that we made. We have some incorrect predictions that we made. And we're here to talk about all that we did right, all that we did wrong, all that these teams did right and wrong, these players did right and wrong. It is a very stat-heavy show today on the wild card recap today on Above Replacement Radio.
Yeah, for sure. We have a long prep sheet, a lot of notes, because there were a lot of things to pay attention to in all of these games. A decent amount of close games, which was nice. I know it was kind of disappointing that obviously we only had one game 3, but there was some good competition within that. Really, I'm trying to think. Didn't seem there weren't any blowout victories in any of these 9 games.
The largest like margin of victory was 4 runs, which was in the tied between Mets-Brewers game 1 and Padres-Braves game 1, I believe.
Yeah, right. And
and none of the games were blowouts, and we got some great games. Obviously, we finished off with an absolute banger with the Mets and Brewers game 3. I mean, is there anywhere in particular you want to start?
We could just start kind of chronologically with how these series started. We'll start with the Astros and Tigers, which was definitely the biggest upset of the week. Tigers, we talked about it. They're pulling out their magic. Their magic is continuing. And honestly, with this win, and maybe we could get into this later, but with this win, you really can't put any limits on the Tigers.
No, you absolutely can. Like, I think this is kind of how the team that I'm going to relate this to is the 2019 Washington Nationals, right? Where you see them beat the Dodgers in a best of 5, and you think, okay, well, if they could beat the Dodgers, there's no team in the league that they can't beat, and they went on to win the World Series. That's kind of how I'm feeling about this Tigers team. Obviously, when you look at the record in the grand scheme of things, the Astros weren't at their best in considering how they were the last decade, but they were the hottest team in the league over the last 3.5 months, except for maybe the Tigers themselves. And then the Tigers took care of business here. I mean, a 2-game sweep. What was it? 3 runs allowed in 2 games. I mean, they were dominant.
Yeah, for sure. We're in control for pretty much most of the series ultimately. Just kind of won the moments. They advanced. They're the first AL 6 seed to advance in the new format, not including 2020.
They're the first AL 6 seed to even win a game.
Correct. Yes, because the Blue Jays and Rays did not.
No, never mind. Yeah, they were. I keep mixing up the 2020 seeding.
Yeah,
because the Astros and Twins were the 3-6. The White Sox and A's were the 2-7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. I'm really excited to see them play. But in regards to what happened in these games, game 1, Tigers win that one 3-1, greatly on the power of their ace, the guy they saved for this series and sacrificed a potential of higher seeding for by they had Tarek Skubal out there. He went 6 scoreless innings, allowing 4 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. He had a 31% called strike and whiff rate, which is 3 percentage points above league average, and only a 25% hard hit rate against, which is also pretty low. And his changeup usage was at 36%, which was his second highest changeup usage in any start this season. So pretty high. I have to imagine that the Astros throwing out, I believe it was 7 righties,
Mhm.
helped out with that a little bit,
Oh,
uh,
absolutely.
or at
Yeah,
least
I
skewed the
mean,
numbers.
it's cool to, yeah, I mean, it's cool to see him. Yeah, it's cool to see like the adjustments like that made because I mean, yeah, I'm sure the Astros aren't the only team that's thrown out a bunch of righties for Tarek Skubal this year, but he threw his changeup a lot more than he normally does. I mean, 36%, like I mentioned in my notes, the second highest changeup usage for him in any start this season, and that's I think probably to some degree a postseason related adjustment. You're probably putting more prep into this start in particular, taking a long look at this lineup, thinking, how do I go out and attack these guys? And the answer was change up them to more than usual, and it worked.
Yeah, it certainly worked. And then on the other side, a guy we were very complimentary of, Framber Valdez. He goes out, has an okay outing. Certainly not what he ultimately wanted, I'm sure. Went 4 1/3, had allowed 7 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. And some things, I added were just noticing what happened in that second inning um, where he allowed all 3 of the runs, or 2 of
All
the
three of the
runs.
runs,
Yeah,
all
where he
three.
allowed all 3 of the
It was
runs.
it was back to back 2 out hits, I believe, with Jake Rogers, Trey Sweeney, and who was leading off that game? He was a righty, Andy
Um,
Ibanez, I think.
uh, let me double check.
No, it
I feel
wasn't
like
Ibanez.
it was Matt Vierling.
Matt Vierling, that's who it was. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, back to back 2 out hits.
yeah, and I think a double to open the inning. Um,
Hmm.
and ultimately, yeah, Valdez allowed 4 hits in that inning, which allowed 3 runs in. 3 of those 4 hits that he allowed in that second inning were sinkers in the upper 2/3 of the strike zone. It was just kind of easy to notice that he was leaving stuff up, and you don't want to do that, but especially with Valdez's style of pitching, where everything he throws is moving down, whether that's his sinker, whether that's his changeup or curveball. So avoiding the upper 2/3 of the strike zone is usually pretty necessary. Didn't do that in the second inning, and it bit him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean the thing with sinkers, and I've mentioned this for years on this show, and Chris, you can back me up on all this, but they are very hittable and also very unhittable in a way where you're not going to get a lot of swing and miss on them, but if you throw it the right way you will get a lot of ground balls, you will induce a lot of weak contact, but if you throw it the wrong way you could get hit pretty badly. We've seen plenty of guys that have sinkers that just get lit up, and guys give up a lot of extra base hits, a lot of loud contact home runs, and that's what happens when you leave it in the upper 2/3 of the strike zone, because when you have a pitch that moves down you want it to be as down low as possible, so it makes it harder for a hitter to get under it. And yeah, Framber was leaving it a little up too much, and you saw some line drives at the middle. You saw some solid contact and timely situations, and that's ultimately how the Tigers got their runs in this game.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at that second inning and the contact he got against him on those hits, the first one was line drive, 89.5 miles per hour off the bat, 580 expected batting average. Then he got 97.4 off the bat with a 560 expected batting average. Then 104.9 off the bat, 108.3 off the bat. It wasn't, it was getting the good part of the bat for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and it wasn't like they were just chopping it into the ground. Some of these batted balls that the Tigers were hitting were considered line drives. And yeah, in terms of context for Valdez's performance, he allowed 4 total hits on sinkers in the upper 2/3 of the strike zone, which is tied for the most that Valdez has allowed in his 17 career playoff starts. Ultimately, he also was at a 12.8% slider usage rate, which was his second highest of the season. But Valdez, after solidifying himself pretty strongly in the 2022 playoffs, has kind of slid off in the past couple years. In his last 4 playoff starts, he has an 8.39 ERA and 16 1/3 innings pitched with 26 hits allowed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you think back to the postseason last year, that series against the Rangers, especially. Framber Valdez didn't really come through. The Astros, by the way, have also lost each of their last six home playoff games in this series, which is pretty interesting. And also going back to that slider usage, yeah, something that I noticed a lot in this series, and you'll see this especially. Um, kind of go as we go through these game recaps here. A lot of guys really changing up their arsenals and using certain pitches much more than usual, less than usual, in terms of like some of their highest or lowest usages in the season. And yeah, Valdez right there, 12.8% slider usage, the second most out of like what he make like between 25 to 30 starts this year.
Yeah, most likely. I think he had a short IL
Hmm.
stint, but that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in regard like that's possibly a thing, at least with the higher usage stuff for the less used pitches normally for guys. It's possible that these guys know that they're not going to go through the lineup as many times as they normally do, so they don't want to pace themselves. I know it's like kind of an old school mentality, like first time through the order, you want to
Hmm.
limit what the opponent is seeing. So maybe that kind of carries over to the modern day in the regular season, but in the postseason, I think these guys are just trying to provide their best stuff when they need to at any time. But yeah, the Astros they scored one run. They only scored one run in this contest. However, it did come with a little bit of poor luck on their side. Um, in their final two outs, the Astros had two lineouts in which the expected batting averages were 660 and 570. The odds of both being outs is pretty low. And ultimately they were 1 for 9 on line drives in this matchup. So
Yeah.
it wasn't complete. Um, you know, they weren't completely befuddled at the plate. They obviously could have done better, but a little bit of unfortunate luck on their side.
The Jason Hayward line out to end the game, I thought for sure was getting through and turning that game upside down for sure.
Yeah, it had that feeling of like obviously there were I think multiple guys on, and or were the bases loaded at that point?
I want to say they were.
Yeah, and I mean, if it went down the line,
If
it
they
could have
were,
won
yeah, it
that.
was bases loaded and two out. If that's down the line, that's game over.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
much game over.
it was Chas McCormick on first.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, it definitely had that feeling, especially like Astros playoff magic. It's gonna happen, but nope, right to Torkelson, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a bit of poor luck for sure. Um,
By the
but yeah,
way, how are we feeling about Jason Foley going forward? I know that maybe this is more of a series preview type of thing, but I mean, multiple times now in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Jason Foley come into a ninth inning and give up a lot of base hits. And granted, a lot of that was on some babibbery, as we say here. A lot of balls getting through the infield. You know, balls just kind of finding a spot. We saw it in that Orioles game that we went to a couple of weeks ago. We saw it today. How are we feeling about Jason Foley in the closer spot in a role that the Tigers have plenty of guys that they can throw there?
yeah. Honestly, like at this point in the year, I find it interesting that he is still in that role, and they haven't. Um, I don't think he's necessarily done much to deserve being out of it, but I think there are definitely better options for the Tigers. Especially like Foley does not fit the typical closer, shutdown closer model. The guy had 6.9 strikeouts per nine this year,
Mm-hmm.
3.82 FIP. Like that's pretty good, and that's typically like the guy you throw in the seventh inning. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting that he's in that role. There's certainly some guys who are probably going to allow less balls in play in that bullpen. So yeah, I mean it'll be interesting to see how that's approached going forward.
If I had to campaign for someone in the Tigers bullpen to be the closer, I think I would advocate for the guy that actually did come out and close this game, and that was Bo Brisky. I mean, he has, like you talk about like kind of the makings of a shutdown closer, and Bo Brisky, I mean, he has that, right? Like he throws very hard. He gets the strikeouts. He had over, just over 9 strikeouts per nine this year. Not the greatest, but certainly better than what Foley was offering. The walks are an issue, but I mean, heavy on the four seam. He has a pretty even arsenal with four pitches, which I like out of a reliever. It's not super common. And yeah, like I mentioned, like the high heat, the four seam fastball averages 95 and a half, but it's it tops out at like 98, 99.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, not that the peripherals necessarily follow, but since the start of August, Bo Brisky does have a 1.99 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. But Tigers have an interesting situation there for sure. Yeah, anything more you wanted to talk about with game one before we move on to game two?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can kind of just talk about the general vibe, right? I mean, like the Tigers scored those 3 runs in the second inning. The Astros bullpen was excellent after that. I mean, they didn't allow a run in this game, obviously. The Tigers, they did their thing after they took out Skubal. I believe Will Vest came in at first. I don't remember who pitched the eighth. I want to say it was Gunther. No, it was Holton. Okay, it was Holton for 1 out. And then yeah, it was Foley because Vest pitched the eighth as well. Um, I mean, yeah, like when the ninth inning started unraveling, like I kind of thought like, okay, this is where the Astros, because like I was instantly getting like Mariners Jordan game flashbacks where it's like, wow, it's game one and the Astros are losing. Like, could this really be happening? And then of course reality hits you in the face, but it didn't happen this time. And I mean the Tigers, like they were able to snuff out any momentum that the Astros had at any point in this series, whether it be that ninth inning rally, whether it be getting the lead late in game two, which we'll talk about later. Like I found it very impressive how like not just the fact that they were able to take away the momentum, but how quickly they were able to do it, right? Like, they turned like 3 double plays in the first game, I believe it was. Maybe it was the second game. A lot of ground balls with runners in scoring position that the Astros were putting up, and a lot of ground balls in the series, as we'll talk about later. But I was very impressed with the way that the Tigers were able to, take all that momentum away from the home crowd.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And honestly, after that game one win, it just felt weird because we are
Mm-hmm.
just not used to seeing the Astros in this position this early in the playoffs. They had not trailed in a playoff series before the ALCS since 2015, since they lost game one of
Yeah.
the ALDS to the Royals. So, and obviously they'd been to the playoff tons and tons and tons of times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it's a stat about them not being in the playoffs a lot. 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, in all the series they had before the LCS, they were at least tied or ahead in all those series. So yeah, like it definitely felt weird for sure. But yeah, moving on to game two, where it's like, okay, obviously the Tigers threw out their guy. The Tigers, they had their ace out there. Now it's chaos. Now they really have to earn it. They're really gonna have to outmatch the Astros here, and ultimately they end up doing it. They win 5-2. Hunter Brown for the Astros gave out a pretty good performance. 5 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, and just that 1 home run against Parker Meadows, which was kind of just hooked. Really good placement on Meadows' part. Brown was pretty dominant outside of that for sure. 35% called strike and whiff rate. What were you seeing from what the Tigers were doing on the mound?
Yeah, I mean, the Tigers bullpen has obviously just been such a captivating unit over the last couple of months. That's kind of the entire reason that they've gotten here, right? 254 innings pitched, no one else with more than like 187, I believe the number was. Um, and they showed out in this game from top to bottom, right? Tyler Holton, after pitching the previous day, came in as an opener, and the entire bullpen shoved for 9 innings, a 64% ground ball rate from all Tigers pitchers in game two. For reference, that was the second highest ground ball rate the Astros have put up in any postseason game since 2015, and they've played in a lot of postseason games since 2015. Oddly enough, the only game where they've had a higher ground ball rate was actually one that they won. It was Game 6 of the 2020 ALCS against Tampa. But I mean, for an offense that is known so much for driving the ball, for putting it in the air, hitting a lot of home runs, getting a lot of extra base hits, the Tigers were keeping them on the ground at a very impressive rate in game two. And that's kind of ultimately what it came down to in this one.
Right, right, for sure, for sure. Yeah, they didn't allow, yeah, not a lot of not a lot of threats, not a lot of loud contact necessarily. Um, However, kind of looking at the Astros, they struggled a little bit from um lack of luck. Once again, I think throughout the game they had a 172 average and 325 expected batting
Mm-hmm.
average, which is a pretty large discrepancy, and a 172 slugging with a 550 expected slugging. And I will also say those numbers might be a little skewed because two um two of their loudest outs were straight away. And StatCast and expected stats doesn't really account for what part of the park you hit the ball in. So um there were two barrels that I think Jeremy Pena and Alex Bregman hit, but they were to the
Yeah.
deepest ends of the ballpark. So
Altuve also hit a deep fly ball to center that wasn't a barrel.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, Statcast may have measured their expected sluggings higher because obviously if that's hit to another part of the ballpark, that's probably gone. Um, but yeah, what else did you want to add to the Tigers narratives and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, so let's just go into the big moment in this game, right? It was well, first of all, we got to start with when the Astros retook the lead in this one, and that was in the, I believe, seventh inning, right? That was when John Singleton yeah, came through with that RBI fielder's choice. By the way, shout out to John Singleton for having the or excuse me, he tied the game with the fielder's choice. Jose Altuve took the lead on the sac fly. Um, or maybe it was the other way around. I don't know. No, it was that, yeah, because it was the sac fly that tied it. Anyway, um, yeah, shout out to John Singleton for leading the Astros in WPA this series. But the real drama came in the top of the eighth. It was a Kerry Carpenter single, a Matt Vierling single, and then a Riley Green strikeout and two straight walks, which brought in a run, and it was bases loaded with one out or excuse me, with two outs for Andy Ibanez, who was pinch hitting for Zach McKinstry, who had already doubled in the game. And just to give you an idea, Andy Ibanez against lefties this season, it's 292, 357, 445 for an 802 OPS, a 146 TOPS plus. And what that means is that it means that Andy Ibanez is 46% better than his own average against left-handers compared to his average, which means if it's between left to right-handers, it's double that. It's 92% better. Yeah, so Andy Ibanez, clearly a guy you exclusively want to put up against lefties. That's exactly what AJ Hinch did when Josh Hader entered the game, the $95 million man. And he just laces a ball down the right field line. All three runners come in to score. And at that moment, I mean, it was just such an incredible moment because you realize, like, oh my God, this is really happening, right? I mean, the way that the Tigers bullpen had been, not just throughout the game, throughout the series, but throughout the last 2 months, like a 3-run lead in the last two innings, that that's sticking, and it did.
Right, right. And it just that kind of just sucked the air out of Minute Maid. And yeah, it definitely made it seem like, yeah, it's kind of their destiny to at least win this series. Whatever's happening here, like it's not the Astros time anymore. That, or at least that's what the feeling was. And yeah, Astros didn't, I don't think, really came close to scoring after that. Um looking at what the series looked like as a whole. Obviously, only two games. The Astros hit 350 on hard hit balls. League average is 490, so kind of unfortunate on their end. Astros hit 286 with a 537 expected batting average and slugged 286 with a 707 expected slugging on line drives, particularly. Yeah, I mean, 286 slugging on line drives is
Yeah,
is
that's
definitely
that's rough.
is definitely rough. That is definitely rough. So yeah, unfortunate for them, especially in a short series where that's definitely going to be It's you're more bound to have bigger fluctuations in luck. Um, and yeah, Astros as a whole on all plate appearances, they hit 180 with a 274 expected batting average and slugged 197 with a 436 expected slugging. That is it's just a utterly crazy discrepancy there. However, none of the three barrels that they hit were pulled, so the expected stats may be a little bit more skewed. They also did not perform that well with runners in scoring position. They hit 231 with runners in scoring position and had a 54% ground ball rate. So yeah, some unfortunate luck, but ultimately they just they didn't score the runs.
Mhm. I just am so amazed by just the quick work that the Tigers made at the Astros in this series. I mean, we've seen this team in the postseason every year since at least 2017. We've seen them in the ALCS every year since 2017. And of course, there are teams that have, beaten them, whether it be the Nationals, the Rangers, the Braves, the Red Sox, but or the Rays as well. But every team, the Astros put up a fight, right? In the series that they've lost, the worst one that they played was the 2021 World Series, or actually
Uh,
probably the 2018 ALCS.
yeah,
But even then, they've still beaten the Red Sox twice, right? The only the team that historically has got the best upper hand on these Astros has probably been the Braves, who still lost 2 games to them. The Tigers made it look like nothing to every team that has lost the Astros, that has fought against the Astros and came out victorious, but still, uh, still took a lot of punches. The Rangers come to mind, right? Like the Rangers had a gut wrenching loss, even in a series that they won. The Nationals lost some rough games. The Braves lost two. The Rays almost suffered a heartbreaking series loss to them. They made it look like nothing, which is wild.
yeah. No, it's pretty surprising. I mean, that's why the Astros were so heavily favored and so heavily picked by so many people because it's all we really know, especially over the last about decade. That's what we know from the Astros. So yeah, it's still weird to think about the fact that the Astros are not in the ALCS. Yeah, first time since 2016.
First time
Um,
since we were sophomores in high school. One more note that I wanted to hit on: Andy Ibanez game-winning double had a win probability added of 0.396, which essentially means that it increased the Tigers' chances of winning the game by 39.6%. That is the fifth highest single win swaying moment by WPA in Tigers postseason history, and it's the most since 2012. So in terms of the historical context, that was uh, one of the 5 biggest hits in Tigers postseason history, if you go specifically by that metric.
right,
Which,
yeah,
CWPA is probably a better metric to go off of, but in terms of just single game, regardless of context, game changing hit, well, for hit, it was number 4. There was one pitching moment that beat it, but yeah, top 5.
yeah. No, I'm sure it'll be remembered for sure. So yeah, the Astros losing to pretty much an all-out shocker. We know they're a veteran-heavy team, and we know that this success is going to run out at some point. How are we kind of viewing Houston right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting what happens in these 2 game series where we're these games, both of these games could have gone either way very easily, right? The Astros, some of those line drives could have fallen in, some of those fly balls could have been distributed to better parts of the ballpark, and all of a sudden, we're talking about a fun Tigers team that came to an end and an Astros team that's moving on. Instead, we get 2 Astros losses, and we're talking about kind of we're doing very existential Astros talk because that's just kind of the way things are, right? I mean, I think we've kind of been forecasting a brutal death to this run for some time. Just whenever it happens, it feels like it's going to be, like I said, a quick fall, because I think a lot of people believe that the Dana Brown GM administration has been perhaps a bit weaker than that of his predecessors, especially Jeff Luhnow, maybe James Click to a degree as well. But I mean, Bregman's going to leave in free agency most likely. I mean, he already tweeted, "Thank you, Houston." Um, Kyle Tucker's not going to get any cheaper in terms of his contract negotiations, whatever that's going to look like. Framber Valdez is also not going to be, under control for much longer. I don't think they've extended him at this point. So like, and it's not like they have much coming up from the farm system. I mean, they traded a lot of guys for Yusei Kikuchi, who they never even used in this series. Like, whatever's left in the Astros system, like Jose Altuve is going to be, the lone survivor of that original core. After Bregman leaves, it's going to be him and Jordan, and then Tucker, and then he's got, I think, one more year, right?
Yeah, and he's 35. Gonna be heading into
I
his
mean,
age 35
Tucker.
season. Oh, Tucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tucker has a year more after this.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, I think, the most existential we've felt about the Astros this entire time, right? Because even in 2023, they lose, but they were still one win from the World Series. They could so easily get back. This is obviously by far the farthest they've gotten from the World Series since 2016. And it comes at a time where we really don't know how much time they have left, right? Like, this is back-to-back seasons now where they've won 90 games or fewer, which is a very low bar for them considering what their standard has been in the future. The only thing that really helps is that the AL West has been weak. I mean, like the Mariners, they do anticipate to raise payroll, but we got to see what that looks like. The A's and the Angels don't look like they're going to be competitors anytime soon, and the Rangers, who knows what they are. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely, I think, the most existential we've ever looked at the Astros since 2017.
Yeah, for sure. You're kind of forced to when the season ends this early. But yeah, I feel that, these conversations could have also happened last year a little bit because it was I feel like all the same narratives could be talked about except, years sooner. Obviously, um,
Hmm.
we knew that Bregman was going to be a free agent after this year, not last year. And the aging core was a thing, especially, and I think there were a lot of questions about the rotation at the time as well. But yeah, they've just since 2022, it's been a somewhat slight downhill progression from, what was it, 105 wins to 90 wins to now 88. So we do have that, and when the postseason success doesn't happen like it usually does, it's kind of an abrupt reminder of that. When the postseason machine doesn't work the way we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very weird spot to be in, but I think these conversations are kind of worth having now. I mean, we talked about, you know, the Astros. I don't think we ever pronounced them dead, but I mean, they were 10 games under 500 at one point this season, and we wondered, is this the year where we look back and say this is where the end of the window began? And this very well could be what we kind of look at as the beginning of the end. But knowing this franchise, they could just roll back up and win the World Series next year too.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong possibility. Yeah, I mean, they still have a lot of talent that's going to be coming back. It's just forecasting, what's going to stick around for the long future. But in terms of how I would outlook them next year, I think they still are probably division favorites in my eyes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
The rotation, I will say, like, for as down as we were on the rotation for very long, it's going to be interesting next year with Framber, obviously coming back, with Hunter Brown now with expectations, Christian Javier coming off the IL, Lance McCullers, maybe. I mean, you can never really, unfortunately, lock that one in. But Spencer Arrighetti looked interesting this year. He had some good strikeout to walk numbers, so I'm sure he'll be like one of those guys that I look at this offseason and think, hey, what if he has an average home run to fly ball ratio?
yeah. Um, yeah, no, the Astros, like, I don't want it to be perceived as, we're going full panic mode. It's just when the team has a run of success like it has, any signs of it potentially coming to an end, even if it's a couple years down the line, definitely has to be acknowledged. I
Hmm.
like to make a cross sport reference. It feels like, everyone was trying to pronounce the New England Patriots dead for a long time, and eventually it did happen. Pretty much after 2019. So yeah, when is that going to come for the Astros? Maybe it's this year, maybe it's the year after. Maybe it's not for a very long time. Who knows? But you know, it the Astros as we know it right now with the core and all, it's slowly kind of being chipped at.
Aging.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Aging,
The signs
potentially
of
leaving in
decline are
free
there.
agency.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so those
And it'd be, I mean, how crazy just would it be in retrospect if this is the beginning of the end and the perpetrator is the Detroit Tigers, managed by AJ Hinch.
yeah, yeah. AJ Hinch, what if AJ Hinch kills the Astros dynasty?
Kills the monster that he created.
Yeah, right, right, right. Um, but yeah, anything more before we move on to the next series?
No, let's talk about some Orioles Royals.
Yeah, 4 runs were scored in this series. Pretty
Yeah.
wild. But
Had
I will
yeah.
I will say I enjoyed this series despite its low scores. There were some high tension moments. And I did actually, I expected the Orioles to win, so I was just kind of waiting for them to have a big inning, which never happened. Um, Even when they had the bases loaded and nobody out, didn't happen. But yeah, what were your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, I mean the pitching was very fun to watch. I mean there was a couple a couple lockdown performances, especially in the big moments. We'll start with game one. Obviously, Royals win 1-0. Um, Cole Reagan's 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, 8 strikeouts, a dominant outing. This was the second time in Cole Reagan's previous 21 starts, including this one, where he didn't walk a batter. Walks had become a bit of an issue for him down the stretch this season, but that was not a problem on Tuesday. 0 walks in 6 innings, a 33% called strike and whiff rate, a 21.4% hard hit rate. Interestingly enough, the four seam fastball usage was at 51.2%, the second highest for him this season. He is a four seam fastball pitcher to begin with, but he put that even more uh, in emphasis on Tuesday.
Right, right. And you know, shout out to uh shout out to one of your takes about this series was uh you wanted um you wanted Reagans to have a little bit of a quicker hook, at least a quicker hook than he had in the regular season. And he ends up getting pulled at 80 pitches. A
Mm.
lot of people would say he probably could have gone more, but obviously ended up working out. In the 1 out of 5 times it doesn't work out, it gets talked about way more, but it worked out. No harm was done by pulling him at 80 pitches and I think proven the correct move. Because obviously, yeah, he had probably had a little bit more trouble, third time through the order or seventh inning or later than he did previously. And yeah, dominated for 6 innings and then was done, handed it off to the bullpen and they dominated. So shout out to Matt Quatraro on that
Yeah,
one. And it was
Bethlehem,
ultimately
New York native Matt Contraro.
yes, yeah. Shout out to upstate New York for sure.
Hmm.
It was definitely a pitcher's duel because Corbin Burns definitely contributed his part. He went 8 innings. Uh, Not speaking of quick hooks, 8 innings, 5 hits,
Yeah,
1 run, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. Kept that pitch count low because he wasn't walking a lot or striking out a lot. And his quality of contact against him was very good from a pitcher's perspective. Only a 13% sweet spot rate against. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff from Burns, but ultimately he had no backing from his offense.
one thing that I really wanted to touch on with Burns, I thought was weird, interesting. I don't know why Baseball Savant just took me away from his page, even though I clicked on it. But there was some weird stuff with the pitch usage that I was a bit confused on. So Corbin Burns had a sweeper that he threw this season, but he didn't It was not a part of his arsenal. He threw it a total of 54 times, 1.8% of his total pitches. But according to Baseball Savant, he threw it 16 times in this outing alone, and 19% of the time, his second most used pitch. A pitch that was virtually not in his arsenal at all was thrown the second most. And on the flip side, he also has a slider that he throws 12% of the time, his third most commonly used pitch behind his cutter, of course, and his curveball. His Baseball Savant didn't register a single slider. So I'm assuming that's got to be like a misinput. Like they had to have registered his sweeper as a slider, or he just completely changed up his arsenal, ditched the slider for the start and went with the sweeper.
Yeah, it can definitely be weird with that because of how
Yeah.
similar those pitches are.
hmm
So yeah,
Yeah, it was just something I found interesting.
maybe it just had a little bit extra horizontal movement that day or
hmm
lower velocity. Who
Yeah.
knows? Um, but uh, but yeah, yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing. One note from the Orioles offense and what helped, prevent them from scoring. They got Baltimore'd in the third inning.
They
Uh,
did. They got a
Jordan,
Baltimore twice in this series.
yeah, they hammered some balls out to left field, but unfortunately that is not the ballpark to do it in. Jordan Westberg absolutely just slammed one that would have been gone in 28 out of 30 ballparks, but not Camden Yards. That was with a runner on second base and 2 outs in the third inning of game one. And yeah, I mean, sucks for Westbrook. He had a really high quality of contact, but unfortunately, it was pretty much a routine flyout to MJ Melendez. That was one of the Orioles' 6 outs with runners in scoring position. In that game one, they ultimately went 1 for 7 with 3 strikeouts in that department. So yeah, offense, whether it be in the clutch situations or not, seemed to not be very good for the Orioles, except for when they slammed it out to left field.
Yeah. The one run in this game was a Bobby Witt Jr. 2-out RBI single in the top of the sixth. It was a ground ball. It was a ground ball, 6-degree launch angle on that one, but found a hole, and that's the difference maker in this one.
Yeah, and just Royals pitching came up big in big moments. Ultimately, or the Orioles, offense didn't come up in big moments, however you want to spin it. Um, Anything you wanted to talk about more before we get into game two?
Yeah, so just a couple more notes I had. The Orioles as a team had a 120 expected batting average. That was the sixth lowest for any team in a postseason game since 2015, which just goes to show how dominant the Royals pitching was, especially considering they had that Jordan Westbrook flyout that I'm sure bumped the expected batting average a bit. Maybe not too much because of a long fly ball doesn't affect the expected batting average as much as the expected slugging. But I mean, in terms of the no walks, the high strikeout volume, low quality of contact, yeah, the Orioles had an all-time bad game over the last decade. The Royals, interestingly enough, despite 5 hits, 0 extra base hits, they became the 19th team in postseason history to win a game with 5 or fewer hits and 0 extra base hits. Just for context, teams that do this are now 19 and 166 all time in the postseason. So that is, I mean, if you thought the White Sox 41 and 121 was bad, I mean 19 and 166.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no.
Just for context, the White Sox, but like 20, 30 games worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Royals the Royals offense was kind of bailed out for sure
Mm-hmm.
by their pitching. And yeah, that kind of led into game two where Royals score 2 runs and they win. They win 2-1. Seth
Couple two
Lugo,
ground ball singles. I believe every Royals run was scored on ground ball singles, by the way.
there we
Which
go.
like
Yeah.
shout out to 1980s baseball, the Royals and ground ball singles.
Yes, and indeed. I mean, A-Rod must have been in an absolute tizzy, in a positive tizzy, whatever that may
Yeah.
be. Um, Seth Lugo on Wednesday went 4 1/3, allowed 5 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts, and had a nice 30% called strike and whiff rate. Meanwhile, the bullpen went 4 2/3 scoreless with 1 walk and 6 strikeouts. And
One hit too.
yeah, the Orioles continued to struggle with runners in scoring position. I believe 0 for 6.
Yeah, 0 for 6, a strikeout. And then in terms of the batted balls, it was 91.9 miles per hour and 71 degrees. So that's a pop up. 89.1 miles per hour and 45 degrees. That's a can of corn fly ball. 78.8 miles per hour, 11 degrees. That's like a flare line drive that was caught. 97.1 miles per hour with a 7-degree launch angle. That's a ground ball. And then 61.1 with a -53. That's also a ground ball. So just weak contact, or just like not the right kind of contact. Nothing good. Only 1 ball in the sweet spot, a 20% sweet spot rate with runners in scoring position, with that sweet spot ball being essentially a ground ball.
Where was that 97.1 degree?
99, I said 91.9.
But the 97.1 mile per hour 7-degree launch angle one that had a 600 expected batting average, so I will give credit on that
Okay,
one.
fair enough. But it
Um,
is still a ground ball, and that's always, if it's hit to the wrong place, then it's hit to the wrong place.
right, yeah, it could have been higher than 600,
It could have.
but was not. But yeah, Orioles just, yeah, I mean, like I feel bad for the fan base because
I
it is
feel
just
terrible for Orioles
five
fans. Yeah.
5 games where in a lot of ways the Orioles have just not shown up the last 2 years.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, this is the one series where I nailed my prediction. I had Royals in 2. I don't know if I had it like this though. I really don't. It's crazy that for so long we talked about how the Orioles need pitching, how they'll never win in the postseason without pitching, and they don't have enough of it. That's their big issue. They need to go out and get an ace pitcher. They did that. And you know what? Like, it's on the players. Like, we can criticize the Angelos all we want. We can criticize uh plenty of different people, but like the Orioles went out and got an ace pitcher, and unfortunately, some other things happened. Right? Bradish went down. Grayson Rodriguez was out with an injury. Pitching was not the issue. It was the guys that you expected to be there the most. Right? Gunnar Henderson 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts. Adley Rutschman went 1 for 8. All the guys that you needed to be there, the guys that you kind of leaned on, the guys that you've made the face of this, what they've called the next chapter, they didn't show up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the 7, 8, 9 hitters not doing well. It was guys like Rutschman and Henderson, Henderson especially. Uh, and,
Santander.
and yeah, I mean, I will say with the Orioles to kind of bring perspective to this, I would say 2022 was probably like 2 or 3 steps forward for the organization. 2023 was another 2 or 3 steps. This year was definitely a step back.
I think, yeah.
They needed to make some advancements, whether it be win more games in the regular season or advance further in the postseason or win a postseason series. And they failed to do both, despite having arguably a better roster.
I think if the Orioles don't win the World Series in this window or with this core, whatever parameter we're setting here, we're going to look at this season as the biggest miss, which is crazy because they didn't win the division and they, lost in the wild card. But I mean, the division was very, very winnable. And given the other teams that lost, I don't know how the Yankees would have fared against the Royals. I guess we'll find out momentarily. But uh, this was such it was right there for them, right? I mean, they needed 94 wins to win the division, assuming they won the season series against the Yankees, and that's what 7 less than they won the previous year with adding an ace to the staff, and it was right there, and they didn't take it. And like I mentioned, the rest of the AL, the Yankees, I think pretty clearly have the clearest path to the World Series, and that's what the Orioles could have had if they won the division and the Royals beat the Yankees, but that's not what we're looking at. And yeah, I think there's a very good chance we could look at 2024 as the how did they not do it that year season, because 2023 you could chalk up to they ran into a team that had a guy like Corey Seager that had the playoff experience, recent playoff experience.
And
This
and
this was not like it was two very winnable games that they didn't come through in, and the thing that you expected to be there wasn't there.
yeah, and last year, first time in the dance,
Yeah,
things
exactly.
things were new.
Even if the opponent had the same thing, there was still more playoff experience on that team.
Yeah, very, everything, the fact that they got there was kind of an accomplishment in itself. Whereas
Hmm.
this year, the expectation was to get there, and the expectation was to go, somewhat deep in the postseason. And obviously there was optimism to, take the ultimate prize there. But yeah, no, they, um, luckily they make the playoffs. They host a playoff series, but they lose to, I think, really on all fronts, and what should have been an inferior team. I don't know if obviously the Royals won, so I guess they aren't the inferior team, but they definitely seemed like it coming into it. And yeah, it's unfortunate. What I will say with the Orioles is like I can't, as much as it would be good for radio, I can't send out the alarm bells yet, considering how much control they have with most of their young core. Because otherwise, I would be thinking I would want to make comparisons to um, the Blue Jays and where they were at in 2022 and 2023, who had a you know great young core, but time just did not come through the way we wanted them to, or the way that they should have. The Orioles, I mean, yeah, maybe if they do this for 2 more years, they're at this level, but for now, you just kind of have to shake this one off and move on, and hopefully recorrect, hopefully be healthier for next year, because
I don't
yeah.
I don't blame anyone who sounds the alarm bells. One, because like I mentioned, I think this might could very well end up being the best chance they had. But also you're going into the offseason knowing you're probably losing your ace pitcher, and you also might be losing your 40 home run hitter. Like those are two pieces that might not be coming back. And not only that, but I mean, the trade deadline in hindsight looks like a disaster. I mean, Trevor Rogers and Eloy Jimenez didn't even make the postseason roster. Connor Norby looked pretty good for the Marlins down the stretch. Um, like they have all these prospects, and they still have the best farm system in the league. But you know, I think right now Mike Elias is thinking, all right, I kind of missed on these ones, and it may have cost us.
Right, right. And I think also a large part of whether the alarm bell should be going off is how effective potential new ownership can be.
Which we
Because
don't
yeah,
know.
we don't know. So yeah, if they continue to be on this budget, then their window is definitely shorter. And
Let me ask you this. What do you think the number one priority should be? Is it extending a piece that's already here, or is it going outside the organization to get someone? Because I don't know who that guy would be. Because I mean, like the first name that would come to mind is Juan Soto, but the Orioles aren't doing that, and I don't think that's the biggest need that they have. So like I don't know if you're Dave Rubenstein and you say and you have one thing you want to do, what would that be?
yeah, that's a good question. I'm just trying to see how much control they do have. It appears they have 3 more years of control of Rutschman this year, and I guess now would be kind of a good time to eke out a more team friendly
Hmm.
deal. Um, Gunnar Henderson, they have 4 more years of control of. So there's not necessarily a rush to do that. Although, I mean, this would be the time to do one of those Bobby Witt Jr., Fernando Tatis Jr. extensions. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a good question I think, if you want to make an impact for next year, I think it would definitely be to go outside the organization and help yourself out that way, whether it be getting a getting a bigger name starting pitcher, like they did last offseason, or getting a significant bat, or a series of moves that add to the team. I think I feel like that's kind of more of a necessity for the Orioles, because I I don't think when you look at this team, you're like, okay, who are the faces of this organization? What's happening with this organization? What direction are they going in? I think an example with that the Red Sox before extending Rafael Devers. I don't think the Orioles necessarily have that problem. It's mostly a matter of how are we going to win next year, and how are we going to maximize our potential next year. And I think in order to maximize, they'll probably have to add more to do that, and then worry about the extensions within the organization later.
Yeah, I mean, going outside the organization is, it's a move that I'd understand, I guess, depending on the person, and I don't really know who it would be, but I think there is some kind of need to extend somebody this winter, whether it be Henderson, whether it be Rushman on a team-friendly deal, maybe even re-signing Santander. I think there is a necessity to show some commitment to this group because, like, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I think most teams would have done something already to at least secure somebody from this group, right? I mean, maybe even Colton Cowser, right? Like the guy's going to win Rookie of the Year. You're getting that draft pick reward for him. Like maybe I think just show some kind of commitment, right? Like they've put so much emphasis and so much marketing and so much reliance on this young core, and they're calling it the next chapter, and uh, showing that this is a group that's going to be around not just this year, next year, but if for years to come. I think there needs to be some kind of commitment handed out this offseason, especially because there's been a lot of questions about leadership and who is the clubhouse leader. I mean, the Orioles have the power to kind of make that choice right now, uh, with who gets the extension in a way. Um, Obviously, Gunnar Henderson's the one that's going to be the most lucrative right now. Adley Rutschman has been kind of the face of this rebuild, given that he was the #1 draft pick, given that he was the first major prospect to make it up there. Maybe he's the guy. I think there is some sort of necessity to pick a guy and say 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9, 10, whatever it may be, we want you staying here. And I think that's going to show something to the rest of the clubhouse that there is a real commitment here. It might encourage more guys to stay. If the Orioles are willing to make those offers as well. But I think something big has to be done, whether it be bringing in an outside free agent or a commitment to one of the guys already in the system.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's potential that both could be done in the off
Oh,
season,
absolutely, absolutely,
especially
for sure. Honestly,
especially
that's what should be done.
considering most of those extensions do happen during spring training because the
Hmm.
team is with the players at the time.
Yeah,
So
one might cause the other.
I will say, if they have a slow off season, the pressure really is on to
Absolutely. Oh my God.
make an extension, um, because otherwise, that's almost a slap in the face to the fans. Anything more uh, before we wanted to move on to Mets-Brewers?
Now let's talk about the 3-game series.
Yeah, the 3-game, what a pleasure. It's
Yeah.
the secret is the Mets. You need the Mets in a wild card series in order for it to be 3
Three
games.
games.
Outside of 2020 the Mets are the only, or the Mets, it's Mets Padres and Mets
Yeah, Mets and
Mets Brewers
Padres and Brewers and A's, White Sox,
and White
Cardinals.
Sox. They'll be back in the playoffs soon, both those teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Mets and Brewers clashed for 3 games. Pretty good. Pretty much every game was very good, outside of maybe like the last 3-4 innings of game one because of the size of the lead. But very good series top to bottom. Mets win game one 8-4. Severino has a classic innings eater
Yeah.
start. 6 innings, 8 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, but avoided the hard contact, 13% hard hit rate. Freddie Peralta did not go very far. He went 4 innings. His slider usage was at 7.3%, which was the second lowest it's been all year, which was definitely an interesting choice. And then the Brewers, as a team, had 11 fly balls and pop-ups combined, with an average exit velocity of 81.9 miles per hour, which is the 9th lowest for a team in a single postseason game. Minimum 10 combined fly balls and pop-ups.
Wow.
I will say the Mets experienced some a little bit of luck on the ground balls. They ended up hitting 400 on the night on ground balls, and they were specifically 3 for 3 on grounders with runners in scoring position, which helped them get to 5
Yeah.
for 7 with runners in scoring position. And
One
a
of
lot of
those, one of
that,
those was definitely less on luck and more on something else, though.
yeah, what might that be?
Well, I'm talking about the Jose Iglesias hustle infield single that started the 5-run rally in the 5th inning that eventually won the game. I just want to say, Devin Williams is going to get most of the blame for the Brewers losing this series. Joel Payamps could have just covered first base.
As I was watching that, I was like, where was he?
Yeah, he just didn't cover the base.
Yeah,
Well, he did, just not in time.
right. Which,
Because that, I mean, literally, that's the difference maker. Because the Mets tie the game on that play. It was with 2 outs that would have ended the inning. They go on to score 5, and that's the final score. And I mean, what happens the next night? Like Joel Payamps not covering that base literally made the difference, and it definitely helps that it happens in game 1, whereas the Devin Williams thing is a more dramatic thing later in the series. Uh, but I mean, when you're comparing giving up a home run and not covering a base, one of them is much more preventable than the other.
yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. Because yeah, after Iglesias, it's a base hit by Nimmo, base hit by Mark Vientos, intentional walk to Pete Alonso, and then another 2-run base hit for JD Martinez. Yeah, no, like pretty bad mental error. I don't know. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if he was thinking quickly, and I don't think it was a matter of him not being fast enough to get to the base, and I think he just had a little bit of a lapse there. So yeah, that is definitely a good point to bring up because people are easily going to forget about that, but he definitely should have been covering first. Um, regarding regarding the rest of the game, Mets bullpen did really well. They helped the Brewers not get back into it. They pitched 3 perfect innings with 3 strikeouts and an 0.49 expected batting average against, with Jose Butto being, or how do you pronounce his
Buto,
name? Buto.
Buto.
Uh, he he pitched 2 of those innings, so
Mm-hmm.
played a good role at least in that game. Um, so yeah, Mets win game 1. What were you seeing in game 2?
Couple of things that I saw. Just I mean, when people think of this series, they'll think of Pete Alonso's game 1 performance. The third Met with 3 walks and a run scored in a playoff game. Only Mike Piazza in 2000 and Carlos Beltran in 2006 had also done that. It was just a real gutsy pitching performance from the Mets. Like Severino getting through 6 innings was an underrated huge part of this series for them. They obviously needed him to go out there and pitch as much as possible to save an already taxed bullpen ahead of the series. And I mean, it looked like he wasn't going to get through the 4th at one point, but he kind of buckled down in those later innings there. And getting through 6 was so huge, and the bullpen followed suit. I mean, the 3 innings, the 0.49 expected batting average in those innings, just a massive. Obviously you score 8 runs, and naturally the story is probably going to be the offense 9 times out of 10. But the pitching deserves a lot of flowers for what they did in this game as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. They prevented any outbreaks, no doubt, no doubt. So yeah, then we got game 2. Pretty competitive game all throughout. Uh, it's each team scores a run in the first, but then the Mets get out to a lead, and Mets kind of control the game for most of it. Sean Manaea has a pretty good performance, 5 innings, 2 runs. Something I found interesting was he had a 67% sinker usage, which was his 3rd
Oh yeah.
highest usage, and that helped lead him to a 65% ground ball rate and 12% sweet spot rate. However, obviously not all ground balls are created equal. Gave up some hard contact as well, with 9 batted balls in total, being 100+ mph exit velocity. So it's not like he was necessarily dominating, but he did do pretty well. And the Mets had some opportunities later on, but didn't execute. They went 2 for 11 with 4 strikeouts with runners in scoring position. And in in their 11 at bats with runners in scoring position, they had exactly one batted ball between 0 and 40 degrees, which, the sweet spot rate or the sweet spot is 8 and 32. And even expanding both ends by 8 degrees, the Mets only had one batted ball in that zone, which is bad news, particularly with runners in scoring position, by the way. Brewers bullpen shut it down pretty well in that game. In game two, went 4 1/3 scoreless, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts with an 82.2 mile per hour average exit velocity against, which is about 6 miles per hour below average. And ultimately, Jackson Chourio hits 2 home runs,
Yeah.
which is pretty amazing. And then Garrett Mitchell hits a 2-run home run to break the tie and ultimately help win the game for the Brewers.
The story of this game was Jackson Chourio. I mean, I think it really was his coming out party. Yeah, 2 home runs. He became the second youngest player in postseason history with a multi-homer game, trailing only that damn 1996 Andrew Jones. Probably we talk about unbreakable records. I mean, 19 years old to do anything in the postseason to that degree, that's tough.
Yes, that's end game for sure.
Yeah. One thing that I like, I did a Jackson Chourio deep dive, just in light of this game. My favorite thing is that he is younger than 9 out of the 10 players on Baseball America's top 10 college draft prospects for the 2025 draft.
He's younger than most of the guys.
Yeah, I can't wait for the draft next year only so I can be like, Jackson Chourio is younger than 12 of the 30 players taken in the first round of the draft.
That will be very funny for sure. Yeah,
We can do those jokes where it's like Jackson Chourio is gonna be so good when he hits Jace Laviolette's age.
yeah. I mean, he was doing some great stuff. I mean, the last 3 months of the year, he was one of the more valuable players in baseball. So
Mhm.
it came
Shout
out.
outs, yeah.
His stock is way up, and it was really exciting to watch him go out and perform, and really provide energy
Mhm.
to American Family Field.
One thing that I found very interesting, I looked up every player to hit a home run in the playoffs before turning 21, and the list was pretty staggering. Mickey Mantle, Hall of Famer; Andrew Jones, potential future Hall of Famer; Miguel Cabrera, future Hall of Famer; Manny Machado, potential future Hall of Famer; Bryce Harper, potential future Hall of Famer; Rafael Devers, potential future Hall of Famer; Ronald Acuna Jr., potential future Hall of Famer; Juan Soto, potential future Hall of Famer; another guy who played for the Rays, Jackson Chourio. Everyone on this list, with the exception of one glaring omission, uh, has gone on to have incredible careers. Like this feels like such an obvious just the beginning for Jackson Chourio, and it's not like it's out of nowhere. Everyone knew that he was going to be a fantastic player. He was ranked as one of the top prospects in the sport for a reason. But I mean, yeah, I mean, what a performance we saw from him in this series, especially in that second game.
Yeah, and just in terms of helping the team out and provide energy, first home run comes after the Mets go up 1-0 in obviously what's an elimination game for the Brewers. So immediately hits a home run, ties it, and then late stages when they need a home run to tie it, shows up and does it. So I mean that's really that's to get that out of a young player uh, is really valuable. So kudos to him for sure. Unfortunately, because of his team and the Mets, it's kind of gets muddled in the rest of it.
Shout out
Ultimately,
to shout out to Garrett Mitchell as well. Obviously the go-ahead homer, one that barely squeaked out of American Family Field, but yeah, I mean it was a great game. It sucks for the Brewers that this game got overshadowed by the next one because this was a really good game.
yeah, for sure. This was definitely
Eighth inning
okay,
comeback win.
yeah, for sure. I was yeah, this postseason so far definitely better than the last one.
Oh, for sure.
That's for sure. Um,
Yes.
And then moving on to game 3, the real, main event of all this that as we just mentioned, topped the exciting events of game 2. Starts out as a major pitchers duel between Tobias Myers and Jose Quintana. Tobias Myers, pitches essentially the game of his life. 5 innings, 5 scoreless innings with 2 hits, no walks, and 5 strikeouts. Only needs 66 pitches to do it. Only gives up 1 batted ball above a 500 expected batting average. And yeah, people are gonna wonder why he was taken out. He was taken out after 18 batters. He was taken out right before he was about to face Francisco Lindor a third time. Tobias Myers in the regular season had a 656 OPS against and 23% strikeout rate in the first time 2 times through the order, but in his third time through the order, he had an 845 OPS against and 15% strikeout rate. Facing that third time through the order. So obviously Pat Murphy was paying attention to that. The Brewers coaching staff in general was paying attention to that, and ultimately, it's not like he was going to be out there for the 9th. And that's where
no matter what happened, the same guy was going to be out there for the 9th inning.
Yeah, exactly.
Tobias Myers, by the way, just like shout out to him in general. I believe he was 1-15 in the White Sox minor league system in 2022, which caused him to get DFA'd and kind of jump around to different organizations. And Theo DeRosa of MLB.com wrote a really nice feature on him. So check that one out. It's on Baseball Savant on the front page. But I mean, quite an awesome story for a guy who became, a legit name of the Brewers rotation and a guy that shoved in a do or die playoff game, regardless of the result of said game.
Yeah, exactly. I was not expecting a performance of that caliber from any Brewers starter. I just wasn't expecting anyone to go out there and really dominate. I kind of expected them to kind of eke by and give it to the bullpen, which to some degree that's what was done, but ultimately, 5 shutout innings was not something I would have predicted for Tobias Myers.
No.
And then on the other side, Jose Quintana throws 6 shutout innings, allows 4 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, puts together a 65% ground ball rate against the Brewers. So yeah, great starting pitching in this game. And then the fun starts with
back-to-back home runs in the 7th.
Yeah, I'm blanking on who hit the first one.
It was Jake Bauers.
Jake Bauers and then Sal Frelick, back-to-back homers against
metrically identical home runs, by the way.
Yeah,
very close to it. 1 mile per hour off, 2 degrees of launch angle, 3 feet in total distance. They weren't hit to exactly the same direction. Bauers, I believe, was a little more to the left side. They're both down the right field line, though.
Yeah.
For Frelick, 107.6 off the bat, the hardest hit batted ball of his major league career.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool for him.
Came at a great moment for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at that point, it feels like, this might be the Brewers' time. Brewers bullpen continues to do well, and then we get to the 9th, when the dramatic start, going back to what set up the big moment that we all remember. Looking at what happened here.
Francisco Lindor walk, Brandon Nimmo single through the hole to the right of second base.
Francisco Lindor walk. Yeah, Nimmo singles on a nice 100.2 mile per hour base hit after Mark Vientos strikes out. So yeah, it's first and third, 1 out. Pete Alonso takes a changeup from Devin Williams that was left. The airbender, who leaves it up a little bit too high, catches a little bit too much of the plate, hits it to the opposite field, 105 miles per hour off the bat, a barrel that just soars over the right center field fence. And yeah, the Mets take the lead, and then they add a run for insurance. David Peterson comes in, shuts it down. And yeah, no LOL Mets quite yet.
No LOL Mets. I mean, it's OMG still. This team has never ceased to amaze me in just like staying alive. Uh, like it's like the Mets are literally the cockroach that like survives like an explosion in a movie where like you see like all the rubble and then it's just like the camera pans down and you see a bug just like still going around. Like that's the Mets.
Yeah.
Like this team was dead to rights. Like the narrative was so clear going into the ninth inning. The Mets had two hits. Both of them were from Francisco Lindor. He walks to lead off the ninth, and it's like, okay, well, that's the guy who showed up tonight. Francisco Lindor gets on base three times. The only other guy to get on base was Jesse Winker on a hit by pitch. Like, that's a hit by pitch. Who cares? And just the entire flip of the script was just ridiculous. And it was one of those, it's very rare to see an opposite field home run where you just see it and you're like, oh my God, it happened. And that's how I felt, at least on the Pete Alonso home run. I know it wasn't like upper deck or anything. Like it did barely get out. It was only going in 13 ballparks, but he hit it. And I thought, oh my God, that just happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily for him, it went out, but he kind of pimped it too. He's yelling at his dugout. And yeah, not often can a ops field home run have such a high impact, but it happened right there. Yeah, no, it's pretty sick. Ironically, they're playing sort of like the 2015 Royals,
Yeah.
just coming back. Nothing, no feat is too grand for them. And they I would say Devin Williams is still best closer out there, or at least a
Among them.
top three, top five closer out there. There's obviously an argument for Class A again. But one of the best closers out there, and they get to him and they earn every bit of that every bit of those three runs. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's great to see, and it's just something where it's part of why I was sort of rooting for the Mets a little bit in that game three, because I just want to see this team keep playing.
Yeah.
They're
They're
too
fun.
fun to have their season end just quite yet. I want to see more of them. I want to see them play the Phillies, and they're going to ultimately be doing that later on.
For Pete Alonso, this home run was the eighth highest win probability added on a non-walk-off play in postseason history. For Devin Williams, it was the ninth lowest win probability added in any playoff appearance. So a lot of tied switches in that one. The NL Central has now lost 22 of its last 25 postseason games, dating back to the start of the 2019 NLCS between the Nationals and Cardinals. They've also lost each of its last 10 postseason series. This division is cursed.
Yeah, yeah, they used to
I
share that
think
with
I
the
think genuinely like we should just ban the NL Central from the playoffs next year. Like whoever the four seed is, that's a division winner. And you let in another wild card.
Yeah, and they used to share this trait with the AL Central, but the
Mhm.
AL Central is
They've
removed.
risen from above. The NL Central has failed to do so.
Yeah, the yeah, AL Central has gotten past their barrier. It seems right now. And yeah, NL Central, the tribe has spoken, I guess.
Yeah.
Things need to change.
We've done these like kind of eulogies and breakdowns and look aheads on the Astros and Orioles. I don't really know how we're gonna do that with the Brewers because they're just such an unpredictable team that's also, in a relatively weak division. Uh, they're getting Brandon Woodruff back next year. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are you supposed to kind of outlook this team? Other than I kind of just expect them to come back the same next year, I guess.
Yeah, because they're not uber deep, but I will say like there
They have a
is
nice system, and Jackson Chorio has superstardom potential.
yeah, like I will say this is some of the some of the highest optimism I've had about like a young Brewers core
100%.
in a while. Like
Yes.
whether that be obviously Chorio is kind of the headliner of that, especially considering how young he is, but William Contreras, just under the radar, is one of the most valuable players in baseball. He's put up, I think, two, back-to-back 5-win seasons as a catcher, which is very hard to do.
Mhm.
And he actually improved his expected numbers this year. He's just a really, really valuable guy. And ultimately, I think the Brewers kind of won that three-team deal so far.
Oh,
because they
yeah.
they gave up nothing. But yeah, like having Contreras there, Chorio there, Frelick is awesome to have. I think Mitchell has the potential to be a good everyday player. So yeah, I think,
And that doesn't even get into the minor leagues. Like Jacob Mizorowski is in there. Tyler Black is in there. There are a lot of names. Oh yeah, Jesus Made, who's like my favorite prospect ever because his name is Jesus Made.
right, right.
He's like a
Um,
19-year-old shortstop.
yeah, that
Not
is
not that we'll see not that we'll see him next year, but I just had to shout out the fact that he's in the Brewers system and also like a fringe top 100 prospect.
um, yeah, that is very cool. But I guess the one detraction from all that is it appears that Willie Adames is going into free agency.
Yes.
So, and I doubt the Brewers are gonna hop on that train. So there is that. But in terms of the young core, in terms of guys that are 27 and under, I like what the Brewers have, and especially considering the rest of the division doesn't look like anyone's priming to be absolutely dominant. Brewers are kind of always going to have a shot.
Hmm.
But I don't think, I think this will continue to happen in the playoffs unless, something drastic changes.
Money.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see who's won the last, 9 World Series and look at their
Yeah.
payrolls. Um,
Even the Royals ranked 13th the year they won the World Series.
really,
Yeah. I
that's,
actually I literally I'm not kidding. I looked this up last night just because I was curious. Yeah, according to Spotrac, they were 13th.
yeah. So that there's the answer.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess we can move on to or anything you wanted to dive into more before we get into Braves Padres.
Now let's talk about yeah, I
This
really hope this series was more competitive, but it was not. I mean, it
this
was
this was
honestly
far
like
less
this one
dramatic.
felt over after game one.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Like
Um,
the San Diego had that like Philly type atmosphere. It was the best. I mean, they were the only home team that won, so obviously it's easy to say that they had the best crowd, but I mean that that crowd was rocking both nights.
yeah, absolutely. And helped that they were, in both games they got out in front pretty early, whether it be the first or second inning. So they gained control and they just kept that, and the energy was there, pretty much the whole time. So yeah, shout out to Petco for doing their thing. Michael
Hmm.
King, absolutely dominant performance in game one. 7 innings, 2 hits, 12 strikeouts, no walks. Just absolutely nuts, especially
Yeah.
against the Braves lineup, which they're missing some guys, but still that's really impressive to do. 39% called strike and whiff rate, 21.4% hard hit rate. Also had a 66.7% whiff rate on his sweeper, and he had the most strikeouts on a sweeper in a single playoff game with 7. And sweepers, just from the data I'm seeing, sweepers started being tracked around 2017. So it's not like it's uber recent that it's been tracked. And Michael King has the most strikeouts on a sweeper in a single playoff game, or had that on Tuesday. And he's the first pitcher in postseason history with 12 plus strikeouts, no walks, no runs, and no hit batters in a single game. So yeah, it just seemed the Padres, obviously Michael King was a major factor, but the Padres just dominated from opening, first pitch to last.
Hmm. Yeah, shout out to the Braves bullpen as well. The rotation was obviously put in a very tough spot with Chris Sale getting scratched, with all the games that they had played leading into this series on short rest. AJ Smith Shawver had a tough outing, but the Braves bullpen went 7 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, 1 home run. They kept the Padres offense at bay. Not that it mattered, but I thought they were worthy of a shout out. An 053 batting average with a 228 batting average against, 211 slug with a 427 slug against. So there were some discrepancies, but nonetheless, uh, a very nice job from a bullpen that needed it.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Aaron Bummer.
particularly Aaron Bummer, the longest outing of his career at 2.2 innings pitched.
Yeah, yeah. Fills some innings that the Braves needed to be filled considering the doubleheader they had the day before, and the three consecutive games they had before the doubleheader. So yeah, this was a team that, yeah, I mean they were put in a really tough spot, and that's why I was kind of high on the Padres coming into this series. Was Braves had played 5 games in 4 days and then had to travel cross country, and also did not have their best pitcher going, and that was a recent development that was not in the cards.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know.
they were initially planning to have him pitch, and then he's taken out of the equation. So throws a whole wrench in the mix, and makes it even harder when you're playing 5 games in 4 days. Or ultimately, it ended up being 7 games in 6 days, with
Yeah.
two of them being playoff games. So yeah, just a tough spot that the Braves were put in. So yeah, bullpen did a decent bit of cleaning up. A stat you put in was, the Padres as a team were the first team in postseason history with 15 plus strikeouts, no walks, and no runs in a single game. Braves were the second. Braves had the second game in franchise history with 15 plus strikeouts, no walks, and no runs. That franchise history that goes back to
Yeah, exactly. It
Boston.
means something when it's the Braves.
Yeah, Boston Bean Eaters days. It
Yeah, not
seems.
even the Bean Eaters could do that. When
Yeah,
shockingly they never struck out 15 times in a game
yeah.
when
When
teams are striking out 15 times all year.
Yeah, when you could decide your own strike zone,
Yeah.
it was hard to strike out 15 times.
And
And
also
then
probably score 0 runs too. Well, actually, nah, never mind. It was pretty easy to score 0 runs somehow in that era.
right, right. Yeah,
Except for 1894, of course.
except for 1894 when that's the highest league OPS I think ever. Um
Why did that happen?
yeah, I feel like I've
Like it's a question I've had for years. I still don't know.
I've read about it somewhere, but it slipped my mind, and I think it should be a mystery ultimately.
Yeah,
Um
I prefer to keep it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to see how the sausage is made. It, the
Exactly.
um and the big moment offensively for the Padres was the Fernando Tatis Jr. home run. Came in the first inning, drove in two, and that was gone in all 30 ballparks.
There's
Uh
something about a bottom of the first inning set the tone in the first home playoff game home run from like your star player. Like
yeah.
I think of like the Aaron Judge home run in like the 2018 wild card game against the A's. I think of the JD Martinez home run in against the Yankees in 2018. Like Tatis, like same energy. Like
Yeah,
there's something about that specific thing.
it makes it feel like, oh, they're gonna just run through this team.
Yeah,
Even if they don't end up doing that, it just feels that way.
yeah.
Um so yeah, moving on to game two.
Real
Um,
quick, also I did want to mention big night for the Juan Soto trade
oh yeah, yeah,
because
for
Kyle
sure.
Higashioka homer to this game. Michael King, obviously had that masterful outing, made playoff history, and yeah, shout out to the one. It's amazing how like Juan Soto is the one superstar player that like the trade actually seems like it's worked out, but that's actually happened twice.
Yeah, right.
Like I think the Nationals are very happy with what they got out of the Soto trade, considering they weren't going to re-sign him and they weren't going to compete with him. James Wood looks awesome. Mackenzie Gore looks intriguing. C.J. Abrams was an All-Star this year, and then with the Padres, you saw what happened, in Game One. And the Yankees, I think, are very happy with it too.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And also what I'll add with the Padres is, like, I think Cease should be Dylan Cease should be considered an indirect
Yes,
result
absolutely. Yeah, Drew
of the
Thorpe,
Soto deal, because yeah, Drew Thorpe was in that deal, and I think there's also another guy that was in the
Randy
I could be getting
Vasquez.
that wrong. Um
Yes, no, you're right. It's Randy Vasquez. He did pitch in the series, I believe.
um right, right.
Did he
Yeah,
pitch in
no,
the series? Did that happen? Am I making that up?
um
I'm checking right now.
I feel like he might have been
I
game
feel like
one,
I remember him. We didn't pitch in game one.
maybe
Did he
early.
pitch in game two? Who?
Game two would make sense because Musgrove only went 3 2/3.
He did not, but I remember him. He pitched late in the season. I remember him pitching in Arizona that last weekend.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, moving on to game two, the Braves have Max Fried going out there. That's their best healthy starter right now,
Mhm.
with Strider and Sale being out. And yeah, he unfortunately does not have the best of starts. Has a ends up being a scoreless first inning where he ran into trouble, loaded the bases up, then allows 5 runs in the second inning. Ends up with 2 innings pitched, 8 hits, 5 runs, no walks, 2 strikeouts. 8 of the 13 batted balls he allowed were hard hit, which is a 62% hard hit rate, and 7 of those 8 hard hit balls were between 5 and 25 degrees, which are a recipe for hits, and that's what he ended up allowing. However, there was a little bit of poor luck on his side. The Padres had 2 hits at sub -40 degrees with 2 outs.
It's
There was
tough.
some, yeah, that is some rough luck because he
Sub,
he did
not sub. Just to be clear, he said sub -40 degrees.
below -40 degrees. That's how
Like just so you heard that right, not sub 40 degrees, because that'd be very different.
that's how um that's how much it was chopped in the ground, and
Mhm.
both could have easily got him out of the inning. It was just hit to the wrong part of the field. And there was a little bit of poor luck there, but ultimately he didn't follow up with more of those types of hits. He ended up allowing a 62% hard hit rate at optimal launch angles for hitters. Joe Musgrove had a good start while he was out there, went 3 2/3, allowed 1 hit, 1 run, no walks, 4 strikeouts, along with a 39% called strike and whiff rate. Only one of the 8 batted balls that he allowed was hard hit, and only one of the 8 batted balls he allowed were above a 230 expected batting average. So only one batted
Yeah,
ball had a hit probability above 23%.
I was.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
he is out for the year and probably all of next year with Tommy John surgery.
brutal. Hearing a pitcher getting Tommy John, especially like a pitcher that's like a name, like it never fails to just like punch you in the gut every time you hear it.
Yeah,
Like it's not any easier the 200th time as it is the first time.
yeah. There's almost no other injury in sports where it's like, oh, your
No,
your next 15 months are just completely
a
gone.
wash, like no shot. Yeah,
At least with like,
especially well, for pitchers at least. For position players, it is a little different, but
because yeah, in football, there's the torn ACL, there's the torn Achilles.
mm,
Those, obviously will end your season if you're in the middle of the season, but at least your next season is not likely to be that affected. Tommy John, it's like, okay, you might be out a year and a half, which
yeah.
sucks. Luckily for Musgrove, I guess.
The best case scenario for Tommy John is getting it right after the season because then you only miss one full year.
Yeah, exactly. Which is Musgrove
Yeah.
almost got if
I
he
guess it depends on depending on the tear as well. That does have a difference.
yeah, and yeah, if Musgrove got Tommy John surgery, if the Padres ended up going to the World Series and he got Tommy John surgery, or he tore his UCL like the last game he was out there, I guess that would be the ideal scenario for
Yeah.
if given those circumstances. But yeah, ultimately the Padres obviously did really well in this series. It was completely in their control for virtually the whole series. Offensively, Kyle Higashioka did well, homered in both games. Ultimately went 2 for 5 with a walk with 2 homers. Fernando Tatis Jr. continued his postseason success, went 4 for 6 with a walk and a homer. And then Jackson Merrill continued his hot hitting with a 3 for 7 series with a double and a triple. And then I'd be remiss if I don't mention Michael Harris because
Mhm.
he
He
dominated on
balled
the
out.
Braves.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 for 8, double and a homer for Michael Harris. But the rest of the Braves offense was not fully adept, except for Jorge Soler. Jorge Soler had a OPS above 1,000, but
He hit a
um,
tank to dead center. Yeah.
yeah, he did well. But Padres offense as a whole, got to look out for them. I guess it did help they were facing a depleted pitching rotation, so maybe this was to be somewhat expected. But Padres offense ended up with the highest expected batting average, expected slugging, expected WOBA, average exit velocity, and barrel rate of all teams in the wild card round, and also had the lowest strikeout rate of those 8 teams. So
Yeah.
Padres offense looking really, really good right now, and looking very dangerous heading into the NLDS.
Yeah, I mean, just series recap. This was a pretty underwhelming one in terms of competition. I was really hoping this would be the series to go 3. Um, but I mean, it felt pretty evident from how the way that game 1 went that that was just not going to happen. Um, I feel like for Braves fans, this playoff loss is probably one of the easier ones to swallow, considering some of the ones that they've had in recent years. I mean, 2 losses to the Phillies in a row after winning the division. Um, that, blowing a 3-1 lead in 2020, 2019, don't even need to say it. I feel like this is one of the tougher or one of the easier ones to swallow. I think pretty evidently this was just not the Braves' year. You lose Strider earlier in the year to TJ, you lose Acuna to a second torn ACL, you lose Ozzy Albies for 2 months, you lose Austin Riley, you lose Chris Sale right before the playoffs start. Yeah, I mean, just things didn't go their way. It is Max Fried free agency season. We'll see what their rotation looks like next year, assuming he doesn't come back. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, not much of a eulogy to be done for the Braves here. I mean, this was the first year in a while they didn't win the division. Part of that was because of injuries. Part of that was because some guys underperformed, guys like Matt Olson, Michael Harris the second when he was on the field up until the end there. Um, I believe I saw today on Twitter that they are going to decline Ozuna's option.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting.
$16 million. If I saw this and it's correct, yeah, okay. Mark Bowman. Oh no, I'm sorry. Okay, they plan to exercise the option, so they are taking it.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Yeah,
complete
along with Aaron
sense.
Bummer and Travis d'Arnaud, which, yeah, 16 million. I mean, look, you can say what you want about Marcell Ozuna, the person. The Braves have obviously shown us that they don't really care over the last few years. They continue to do that, to take a guy who had 40 homers for 16 million next year.
Yeah, yeah, and was easily their most consistent bat all year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that definitely helps. Yeah, like, and I think anyone who was paying attention to the Braves this year, it didn't feel like they were really the
Like they tried
real
to,
versions of themselves.
they tried to like recreate the 2021 Magic a little bit. I don't want to even want to talk about the Acuna stuff, but like, they brought in Eddie Rosario, they brought in Jorge Soler. Like they tried to, repaint the picture. But just like way too much went wrong outside of the Acuna stuff for it to work a second time.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
also and they also ran to a much better team in the playoffs than they did the year they won the World Series in the first round.
yeah, yeah, and even the guys that were healthy come playoff time were not playing like their usual selves, or at least throughout the
No.
season. Like, Matt Olson had a hot stretch toward the end of the year, but ultimately we were not expecting a 118 OPS plus from him. We weren't expecting a 99 OPS plus from Michael Harris the second, and definitely not a 76 OPS plus from Sean Murphy. So, yeah, it just didn't feel like it didn't feel like the Braves. It almost was. It just felt like we were not viewing the same team we have been viewing the past couple years with the Braves. And Acuna, Riley, and Strider being out certainly contributes to that. And then the underperformance throughout the rest of the roster also does. So it just seems like this was never meant to be for the Braves. And you can kind of go into next year, into 2025, just kind of shaking things off and knowing that this was almost a fluky year with how much bad luck they had.
Yeah, I mean it's a very possible thing. I think it definitely doesn't help that the NL Central or the NL East rather looks stronger than ever outside of them, right? Like the Phillies look like they might be here a while. The Mets are kind of a wild card. I mean, the Nats and Marlins. I think the Nats could be somewhat up and coming. The Marlins had an interesting trade deadline. I don't think it'll be in too much impact next year, but um, that's definitely a not helpful part of this for the Braves as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, but yeah, anything more you wanted to talk about before we start previewing?
Now let's talk about the LDSs.
So what are you seeing out the the series that's going to start it all, Tigers Guardians?
Get an all AL Central Division series, which means that for the first time since 2016, we will have an AL Central team in the American League Championship Series, and we could even have two, but we're guaranteed one. We're guaranteed either the Detroit Tigers or the Cleveland Guardians, who won the division. In terms of the season series, Cleveland did take the season series 7-6, but Detroit actually outscored them 60-50. So it's a pretty even matchup between these two in terms of what happened in the regular season. Looking into trends, we've already kind of touched on Detroit, so I hit a little bit more on Cleveland, but Cleveland went 39-39 from July 3rd through the end of the season. They got up to a much hotter start. They went 27-27 after August 1st, but they did go 15-10 after September 1st. So they've been playing 500 ball for a while, but they did finish strong with a pretty good month of September. So they are coming off a bit of a hot streak. The only starters we know is Tanner Bybee starting game one for Cleveland. He faced Detroit all four times that they played each other this year. He made four appearances, or maybe this is career. No, I think it's this year. It's this year alone. 4 games, 22 innings pitched. He had a 4.50 ERA and a 3.44 FIP. So Detroit did get some base hits off of Bybee, but in terms of peripherals, he looked a bit stronger. I assume Tarek Skubal is going in game two, but we don't really know that. He only made one start against Cleveland this year. It was on July 22nd. He pitched 7 innings, gave up 10 hits. So Cleveland did knock him around a bit, but only 1 run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, no home runs. So a fantastic F4 outing, and also a good B4 outing is too, but a lot of hits. One thing that we touched on this year, especially in the beginning of the year, was that Cleveland was kind of playing some different ball with Stephen Vogt. Traditionally they had been known to be a more contact-friendly team with very limited power, but they were kind of breaking that stereotype. From March through June, they had a 165 team ISO, which means slugging minus batting average. They were mixing in a lot more extra base hits. But then that ISO dropped to 149 from July through September, 16 points lower. And like I mentioned, from July 3rd to the end of the season, they were a 500 team. So as much as Cleveland doesn't, hit for power, they actually played their best ball when they were hitting for a little bit more power, interestingly enough. Cleveland had a 19.5% barrel rate on fly balls from March through June, but from July through September, it fell to 15.7%. But although interestingly enough, they did still maintain a change in fly ball rate. Cleveland had a 26.5% fly ball rate this year, and that was the highest that they've put up since 2011. And the biggest storyline, I think, with this series is that it's a battle of the bullpens. Cleveland had a 7.8% or 7.8 bullpen F4 this year. That was the highest in the majors. They also led the majors in bullpen ERA at 2.57, bullpen FIP at 3.3, and bullpen home runs per 9 at 0.75. However, their starters, which is something that Cleveland has notoriously been very good with in the last decade, finished 27th in F4, largely because Shane Bieber got hurt. And they went with a very young rotation. They had to throw guys like Ben Lively and Matthew Boyd in there for some starts. But yeah, I mean, the big storyline here is battle of the bullpens, right? I mean, we've touched on Detroit's bullpen plenty over the last few weeks, but with Cleveland, you have, of course, Emmanuel Clase back there, but you also have Cade Smith, you have Tim Herron, you have Hunter Gaddis. This series, I think, is ultimately going to come down to which bullpen succeeds more.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, for the most part, you're not expecting these starters to go, at all beyond the second time through the order. You're expecting probably around 18 batters per starter or less.
Yeah. I can't imagine like any traditional like actual starting plan for anyone in Cleveland outside of Tanner Bybee.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Stephen Vogt's gonna have a lot to juggle with, the same way AJ Hinch will. Maybe this is me putting a little bit too much emphasis on starting pitching, but I think with Scooble going out game 2 and then the series going to Comerica game 3, I think it puts a little bit of added pressure on the Guardians to win game 1
Mhm.
because if the Tigers win game 1, it kind of looks bleak from the Guardians from there because they're going to have to face Scooble, which is, I think, in my opinion, puts them at a disadvantage. And then you go to Comerica, which, everyone prefers to play at home. And I don't think that's an exception with the Guardians. So yeah, I think there's a good amount of pressure for the Guardians to win game 1. I'm definitely going to be paying attention extra because of that, because yeah, I feel like the Guardians, I'm not going to say it's a must win, but it will really, really help them out to win game 1. I think already, no matter what the circumstances, I think like 70% of game 1 winners in the LDS end up winning the whole series. So obviously, obviously it is a major advantage no matter who's going game 2 and no matter where the game or where the series is going once game 3 hits. So yeah, I think that's what I'm kind of focused on just as an observer. But yeah, anything more before we preview the next one?
One thing that I want to point out, so game 2 of this series is scheduled on Monday. A potential game 5, if necessary, is scheduled on Saturday. That would be 4 days of rest for Tarek Skubal. I would have to assume Tarek Skubal starts a potential game 5. And, obviously you never know what's going to happen, but it feels like any game started by Tarek Skubal, you can almost always chalk up as a win for the Tigers. Of course, that's not always the case, right? There's other factors, but I mean, that puts the Tigers in a place where if Scooble goes out and does what he does and they win both Scooble games, they only have to win one other game.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And then, and ideally for them, they don't have to use him twice.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I feel like with the lack of starting pitching assuredness outside of Scooble, it adds so many layers to the series because you don't know exactly who will be out there at any given point, except for maybe the ninth inning, depending on the situation of the game. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun one to watch, and I'm glad that you know it's that one of these teams is going to end up advancing to the ALCS.
Mhm. I Are we ready for predictions?
Um, oh, do we want to do predictions at the end of the series
Oh,
talk?
is that what we want to do, or do we want to? What did we do last time?
We did previews, and then we previewed all of them, and then we did predictions. But I think it might work out better if we do the
Yeah,
predictions
let's
after
just
we
do
preview.
predictions now. Um, I got Tigers taking this one in 4. I have Cleveland, and I'll be more specific. I have Cleveland winning. I have Cleveland winning tomorrow's game. One little bonus prediction: Jose Ramirez did not get a chance at 40-40, or after game 162 got rained out. I think he homers his first at bat, and we just counted his number 40.
That that works for me. That works in my
Yeah,
playbook for sure.
I don't know who's pitching for the Tigers. I don't know if it's a lefty or a righty. I don't know if he'll be batting lefty or righty, but I think he's going to homer in his first at bat.
Yeah. Regarding results in this series, I have the same exact prediction. I have Guardians winning game 1, Tigers take it in 4. I think the Guardians are at a bit of an advantage game 1. Helps out they're at home. They're obviously well rested. I think they
Yes.
win game 1, but Scooble does what he does and helps secure a Tigers victory. And then once it gets to Comerica, Tigers win both. So yeah, I got Tigers in 4. They got past the Astros, so as we mentioned before, I don't think they're really limited whatsoever. So yeah, now on to Phillies versus Mets, another divisional matchup, rightfully so in the league division series. In the season series, the Phillies went 7-6 against the Mets, and they outscored the Mets 69-59. The Phillies have been, they started out the year very hot. They've cooled down over the last few months, maybe partially because they haven't had to play too much meaningful baseball over these past few months, but they are 33-34 in their last 67 games. They're team ERA in the span is 4.70 and team FIP is 4.49. And they are 25th in baseball in their last 67 games. And the Phillies also have the second lowest bullpen FIP in these last 67 games. So if you're talking about momentum, the Mets definitely have an advantage there because not only are they coming off a huge series win, but they ended this regular season 20-9 and on a longer term scale, 65-38.
And also swept the Phillies late.
Yeah, it swept the Phillies late. In game one, it is going to be Zach Wheeler versus kind of a surprise appearance of Kodai Senga,
Yeah.
who has barely pitched at all this year. He's been
I
injured
can't
throughout the
imagine
year.
he goes anything more than like 2 innings.
Yeah, me neither. It's basically going to be like a rehab start, but in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's
What a concept.
what a concept, indeed.
Hey, go out there and see what you got. Also, you really need to win this game.
Yeah, exactly. Zach Wheeler, in like he usually is, seems to be trending in the right direction. Zach Wheeler has a 1.83 ERA and 2.25 FIP in his last 6 starts. And then in game 2, it's going to be Christopher Sanchez versus Luis Severino. Couldn't find any significant trends on Christopher Sanchez. Doesn't seem to be doing
He's just been that guy the whole season.
Yeah, he's just kind of been there, just been doing his thing, getting a lot of soft contact, getting, a good enough strikeout and, good enough strikeout and walk numbers, and has maintained his ERA and FIP in the low threes. And then if you're looking at any particular offensive players to look at, Pete Alonso has done particularly well against Philadelphia this year. He has a 956 OPS and 21% barrel rate against Philadelphia. His overall OPS in the year was 788, so 956 is definitely above what he normally was throughout the year. What are you thinking about this series heading into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it makes sense in the grand scheme of things, but it's also crazy that this is the first Mets Phillies playoff series we're getting ever. Like,
Yeah,
the reality is, it only became possible in 1995, so we're really only talking about 30 years where this could have happened, and this is, the first time, well, since at least like I'd say what, like 2007, that both teams are good. Actually, 2022, that's a total lie. But there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for it. But you think of all like the really good in division rivalries, like the Red Sox and Yankees have met in the postseason before, the Cardinals and Cubs have met in the postseason before, the Giants and Dodgers, the Rangers and Astros. This is the first time we're getting Mets Phillies. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Like I hope this series goes 5.
yeah, I think it's something we're all rooting for because it's going to be 2 great environments at Citi Field and Citizens Bank Park. Obviously, we know the lore with Citizens Bank Park, but yeah, I mean the Mets have been crazy entertaining. Like it goes beyond anything we can analyze. There's just a heartbeat to them
Yeah.
that just it removes analytics from it, and it's kind of fun that way. Like they just fight, they just keep going, and they come through in the big moments, and that's what they've done for the last week or so, whether it be against the Braves or the Brewers. And then the Phillies, yeah, I mean usually they're in the underdog position, and they're not this time. They're hosting. They didn't have that wild card series they had to play. They had the bye. And they're going to be starting their playoff journey at home in this LDS, and yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting scenario to look at because we're used to the Phillies being the underdog.
Yeah, this is I think the toughest series to predict out of the 4.
Yeah, do we want to get right into predictions?
You go first. I have no idea what I'm gonna say.
I have the Phillies in 5 with the home team going 5-0.
I thought about that exact same thing.
Yeah, I think the Phillies take the first 2, Mets take the next 2, Phillies take the final 1.
Yeah. You know what I'm gonna go with? I'm gonna go Mets in 5. The home team wins all but game 5, which
Ooh,
means the Mets come back down 2-0.
yeah, that's true.
Which if there's, I mean, listen, the Mets, if there's anything that the 2000, if there's any team left in the postseason that's capable of doing such a thing, it would be the New York Mets.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hoping for that. It'll probably be a sweep. Given
Yeah,
given how
yeah, seriously.
how things have
We
surprised
deserve
us
we get
before.
nothing.
We get nothing. We'll get nothing and like it.
Yeah.
Um, On to the Yankees and Royals. Yeah, just a nice flashback to like 1985.
I was gonna say, like, so many people, like Mike Petriello had this tweet, but it's like so many people are gonna learn about the insane Yankees Royals rivalry that existed in like the late '70s and early '80s.
Yeah, I mean
They played some tough postseason.
George Brett was just crushing them.
Yeah, yeah, he was demolishing them every single year.
Yeah,
Whether the Royals went on to win or not, George Brett was there.
yeah, for sure. Um, this year when the Yankees and Royals have played, it's been mostly the Yankees on top.
Mhm.
Yankees won the season series 5-2 and outscored the Royals 42-24. The Yankees uh kind of had a similar season arc as the Phillies in terms of getting out to a really hot start and kind of middling from then on. The Yankees are 44 and 46 in their last 90 games. Um, and yeah, it's another classic Yankees versus AL Central team playoff matchup. The Yankees are 5-0 in playoff rounds against AL Central teams since 2017, and they are 12-4 in the individual games against AL Central teams in the playoffs since 2017. Um, the uh, the Yankees, you could look at it one way or another. Yankees pitching has been hot or cold. On the longer term scale, since June 15th, they have a 4.44 ERA and 4.22 FIP, along with a 6.7 F4, which is 19th in baseball. However, since September 6th, they have a 2.87 ERA and 3.60 FIP with a 3.4 F4, which ranks sixth. In game one, we're going to have Garrett Cole versus Michael Wacha. Michael Wacha was going to be the Royals' game 3 starter if they did not, or if they did not win game 2. Garrett Cole has done well over his last 10 starts with a 2.25 ERA and 2.62 FIP. And Michael Wacha has done particularly well over his last 22 starts. Had a rough start to the year, but has really, really settled in with a 2.72 ERA and 3.59 FIP in his last 22 starts. In terms of how these pitchers have fared against these specific opponents, Michael Wacha has faced the Yankees 8 times since the start of 2021 and has a 1.94 ERA and 3.36 FIP. Meanwhile, Garrett Cole has faced the Royals 3 times since the start of 2022, where he has thrown 18 and a third innings pitched with a 3.44 ERA and 2.34 FIP. And then looking at game 2, which is the I think only remaining game with starting pitchers announced, it's going to be Carlos Rodon versus Cole Reagans. Not any specific trends with either of those pitchers. And then looking at the Yankees as a whole, offensively, largely led by Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, they have led the majors in barrel rate with a 10.5% barrel rate, average exit velocity with a 90.1, expected slugging with a 453, expected WOBA with a 345, and chase rate with a 24.5% chase rate. I know Juan Soto definitely had a factor with that. What are you thinking about this series heading into it?
Yeah, this might come as a surprise, but I'm actually going to go Yankees in 4. And I have the Royals winning game 3 at home. I know people, so I mean, game 1, Cole, I mean, Walk has been very good against the Yankees for the last few years, but I think playoff Cole is going to come in and do that thing that he did against the Cleveland in 2022. This is another AL Central team, so that's part of it. People might look at Reagans versus Rodon as a mismatch in favor of the Royals, but the Royals had an 84 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitching this year, tied for 4th worst in the majors, ahead of only the White Sox, the Marlins, the Rockies, and the Reds. So they were among some of the worst teams in the league in terms of hitting lefties. So I don't love that matchup. And yeah, the Royals do play very well at home, but I think the Yankees will conquer one game there, and they'll take both series at the stadium. So I'm going Yankees in 4.
Yeah, I'm going, I guess, on the safer side and saying Yankees in 3. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
Yankees in 3 here, just because any biases I had against the Royals offense heading into the Baltimore series were
We're
greater
vindicated.
emphasized. The
Yeah.
Royals offense, I mean, they're gonna have to score in this series,
Yeah, I was
unfortunately.
say don't let the Orioles ineptitude distract you from how bad the Royals offense looked in that series.
Yeah, because actually we had some numbers for regarding that series. I want to refer back to them. Um, the Royals had a 14% line drive rate against the Orioles in their series, a
Mhm.
16% sweet spot rate, which that sweet spot rate was the worst among
That's
playoff
bad.
teams, worst among playoff teams by 15.6 percentage points.
Yeah.
They also had a 48% ground ball rate, which was the highest among playoff teams. So, excuse me.
Well, they
And
did
this
have a
is not,
375. They had a 375 BABIP against ground balls, I believe it was, which
yeah,
I will say plays very favorably considering the guy that will likely be closing games for the Yankees
true, true. And
if that
also,
continues.
Bobby Witt Jr. is very fast, so that also helps.
Yes. Yes.
Um, but and that's not a blip in the radar. The Royals didn't just have a bad 2 games. Their 29 games leading into that, they had the lowest OPS in baseball, lowest average, lowest slugging, lowest on base percentage, lowest sweet spot rate, which was even worse against the Orioles. So the Royals, I don't think they're going to limit the Yankees um, to 1 run in 2 games the same way they did the Orioles. And yeah, I just don't trust their offense. Um, and their starting pitching is good, but they have to score. And the Yankees,
Mhm.
I think, are going to score. I don't think the Royals pitching is gonna shut down the Yankees offense, especially Judge and Soto. They're major roadblocks. Um, and yeah, in terms of it helps that the Yankees are starting off in the Bronx. Think about the teams that the level of teams that have had the capability that to beat the Yankees in the Bronx. It's only like
The
2018 Red
Astros.
Sox,
Yeah.
2017 or 20, not even 27, 22 Astros, 2019 Astros. It's those 3 teams that all
Mhm.
won over 105 games or more. Those are the qualities of the teams
Yeah.
that beat the Yankees.
Yeah. Well, Cleveland did it once.
Cleveland did it once on, like 15 million ground balls. They were
Yeah.
able to, luck
Oh,
their
by
way
the
into
way, we
one.
get the joy of Bob Costas in this series too.
Yeah, there we go. There
Very
we go.
excited for that.
But yeah, in order to beat the Yankees in the Bronx, you usually have to be a very talented team. And yeah, the Royals are going to need to score, and I just don't trust them to score. It could be, potentially low scoring affair, but I think the Yankees come out on top in all 3 games. So yeah, I got Yankees in 3. Let's move on to the final series.
Yeah, the final series is Padres Dodgers. It is a 2022 rematch, also a
Yeah,
2020 rematch. So this is round 3 of these NL West juggernauts. In terms of the
yeah.
season series, the Padres won 8-5. They outscored the Dodgers 62-56. Unfortunately, we did just learn that Joe Musgrove will be getting Tommy John surgery, and thus he's out for this series. But here's what we do know. In game 1, it will be Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Dylan Cease, who has not pitched in these playoffs. Yamamoto against San Diego this year, 6 innings pitched, 8 earned runs, 1 hit, or excuse me, 1 walk, 1 hit by pitch, 8 strikeouts, 2 home runs. Much of that was that game 1 in Korea, or that game 2 in Korea, I should say. But he did, yeah, a 12 ERA, a 6.33 FIP. So obviously not very good. One of that was 1 bad inning, though. Dylan Cease, 2.46 ERA, 2.71 FIP in his last 14 starts overall. In game 2, we'll feature Jack Flaherty versus Yu Darvish. Flaherty has a 27.5% strikeout minus walk rate with Detroit, but only an 18 with LA. So the strikeout to walk rate, or strikeout minus walk rate, has gone down quite a bit since the trade. He also had a 34% called strike and whiff rate with Detroit, 31% with LA, so that's gone down a touch as well. In terms of players to watch, they both come from Tatis Jr. versus the Dodgers this year. Hit 350 with a 1072 OPS, a 93.4 mile per hour average exit velocity and a 16% barrel rate. It appears at 979 OPS and a 13% barrel rate. Chris, what are you looking for in this series?
Yeah, it's I'm looking for I'm trying to see the Dodgers really need to put a halt to this momentum that the Padres have built.
Mhm.
And it's one of those series where it feels like almost the Padres had an advantage by playing some postseason baseball before this one. You know, if there
It's
was a
like a
team,
warm up because yeah,
yeah, yeah, it helped. I think
the
it helped
Braves
them
came in and
out.
let them take some BP.
And it's really a testament to the Padres' depth that they have played 2 playoff games and they can still throw out a quality ace like Dylan Cease out there to
Mhm.
start this series against the Dodgers. And yeah, Padres had the better record in the second half, but the Dodgers had the better record overall. Obviously, it's going to be really exciting to see Shohei Ohtani out here. He's going to be, you know, hate to throw this word out there, but an X factor for the Dodgers. He's the guy that hasn't been there for the Dodgers playoff failure, so maybe he can throw a change to that. Hopefully, you're banking on Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts combining for more than one hit this series. But yeah, I think there's a lot up in the air. I'm really excited to see this series. Either result in any direction doesn't surprise me, whether it's a Dodger sweep, a Padres sweep, whether this goes 5. Um, Nothing is really going to surprise me. It's just, yeah, Dodgers have to defeat that playoff stigma. Unfortunately, they're, facing another NL West team in the LDS under this playoff format. And, um, history has written itself the past 2 years. Are they going to let it continue? But yeah, those are most of my thoughts on the on this series.
I think there is a ton of pressure on the Dodgers to basically win both games in LA, to be honest. The pitching matchups are favorable, if not even, I would say. But when you go to San Diego and game 3 is looking like it's Michael King versus Walker Bueller, I don't love that. I really don't like the sound of that. Game 4, I don't really know what that's going to be for the Padres. It was supposed to be Joe Musgrove, but I know it's going to be Landon Knack for the Dodgers, and I don't love that. Uh, so we'll see what that looks like. But I think there's a ton of pressure on the Dodgers to win both in LA because it feels like the Padres are at a huge advantage going into San Diego if it's tied 1-1 or even if it's 2-0. With that being said, I have Padres in 4.
Right, right. And I mean, we saw it 2 years ago when they faced off. Dodgers won game 1, but Padres were able to come out on top game 2. And yeah, Padres just were able to do very well in Petco when they played each other and make it not go back to LA. I'm going more aggressive. I got Padres in 3 here.
Wow, you're going
Um,
sick. You're going what? How would that be 9 straight playoff losses for the Dodgers?
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
Because and this isn't even, partially anti-Dodgers because they've made me look like an ass before with some of my predictions.
They've
But
made
also,
all of
yeah,
us look like an ass before.
I'm I'm really high on the Padres, and between like the
Yeah.
Padres are better than they were in 2022, and they're better than the Diamondbacks last year, in my opinion. So it's gonna be
And the
the
Dodgers,
hardest.
record wise, are worse than they've been in a while.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know,
absolutely.
talent wise, maybe not, but that pitching staff terrifies me right now and not in like the good way.
Yeah, exactly. Like Tyler Glass now being out is definitely um a a a detraction for them, unfortunately. They traded for him to be an ace, and he was an ace while he was healthy, but he's not healthy right now, and he's not there
Mhm.
to start that game for you. So you got Yamamoto, who I don't know the last time he pitched like 6 or more innings. He's coming back from injury. And um then there's Flaherty. Flaherty's done well, but he isn't as dominant as he was with Detroit. So there's a little bit of a dilemma there. Yeah, and this is mostly just me being very confident in the Padres. They're just a really deep team. They're a hot team. And I just see them winning in 3.
In
But
case you're
yeah,
wondering, the last time Yoshinobu Yamamoto pitched more than 5 innings was June 7th.
right, right.
It was
And
against the Yankees.
not necessarily, I don't think Dave Roberts was going to
Mhm.
expect him either way to go
No.
very far, but Still,
Um,
it's he's still getting his feet under him.
yeah, no, for sure. In his 4 starts post injury, starting on September 10th against the Cubs, 4 innings, 4 innings, 3 innings, 5 innings. Had a 3.38 ERA, but a 2.29 FIP. So I mean, he pitched well, just not a lot. But I'm assuming they're probably going to hope to maybe stretch him out in this one if possible.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that Padres lineup is really good, and they showed that against the Braves. They were hitting the ball the hardest, they were getting the most barrels, they were making the most contact out of any playoff team in the wild card round. So yeah, I'm very confident in the Padres for sure.
Mm,
And I think part of it is a little bit of bias also with how the Dodgers have performed in the playoffs. But given the way the Dodgers lost last year with starting pitching depth being a problem for them, it's hard not to see the same fate for them this year.
yeah,
But
I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
it it was
I think their top two is better than what was
yeah,
it, Kershaw and
Bobby Miller.
Bobby. Oh yeah, yikes.
Yeah,
Yeah, Lance Lynn starting game 3.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it's not where they intended it to be at. So yeah, anything more before we wrap this up?
No, this is what a marathon. It is 1:45 in the morning as we are recording this in the Eastern time zone. And we got playoff baseball in 12 hours.
Yeah, yeah, very fun, very
So rest
fun.
up.
Yeah, I will make sure to do so. Yeah, no, we we have all the same teams winning this time around.
We do.
We we do not have same games. Yeah, you were 3-1, three and
No,
one.
we were different in Phillies and Mets.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Yep.
Yes, I went 3-1. I had the Royals, I had the Mets, I had the Padres. I did not have the Tigers. I nailed my Royals in 2 prediction. I was wrong on the amount of games for the Mets and for the Padres.
Yeah, I was 2-2. I had the Orioles in three, and the Astros in two, but I did have Mets in three um and Padres in two. And I feel like getting a correct one on a three gamer just feels so
Yeah,
special when
and we'll
um
call that like a tie between us. Like you got more of the team plus game. I just got more of the team.
I went 2 for 4 with with two how would it work?
You went 2 for 4 with two
I
homers, essentially, right? Like you couldn't have done any better. I
I
went
guess
3 for 4 with a homer and 2 singles.
maybe. Um
I don't know.
I don't know. But that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Check out all the features on that YouTube channel, including guest interviews. Most recently, Mark Simon's fourth appearance, where you can hear all about the defenses in this playoff in this in this playoff tournament here, and everything he's seen from these teams, along with other special guests like Chris Rose, Foolish Bailey, Jeff Passan, Mike Petriello, and Sarah Langs. And follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran. And follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time where we'll be talking all the happenings of Major League Baseball. Once again, see you then.
This conversation is over.
Is over.